Yes, I'm in love.
If only everyone had a love story like Ray and Jenny Kellett.
They very much were in love and did anything necessary to be together.
It was the second marriage for them both, but theirs was a devotion that was bound to last. This was a strong relationship.
Very strong.
And making the partnership complete, Ella, their rescue dog, who never left their side.
The three of them were always together. They took her everywhere.
And when a trip into Australia's outback turned to horror, it was Ella who would alert the world.
They are not lost. Something terrible has happened.
Tonight,
police have now discovered human remains in an abandoned mine shaft.
The mysterious disappearance of Ray and Jenny Kellett, lost on a journey into the desert where three set out and only one came back alive.
I want to bring Mum home.
We'll analyse the evidence.
He's lied.
But what's the motive for lying?
Hear from a witness.
And he's seen us and he's like, oh, yeah, fuck off, you know. That's not normal behaviour.
And examine the only survivor's account of what happened.
Did you deliberately mislead the police about where you went with Ray and Jenny?
No.
Good evening, I'm Liz Hayes, and this is Under Investigation. March 19th, 2015. Jenny and Ray Kellett and Ella head out from Perth. It's an adventure they've been planning for months, a prospecting trip searching for gold. Their destination? The old goldfields near the remote town of Sandstone. With them, friend and workmate at WA's Cloudbreak mine, Graham Milne. Milne isn't embraced by everyone in their family, including Jenny's daughter, Kelly Keegans.
Graham didn't have a lot of friends on the mine site. He was a bit isolated. He would always be a bit removed from everybody. He wouldn't really contribute to the conversations. He was clearly awkward and uncomfortable.
But Ray and Jenny are swept up in Milne's experience and passion for prospecting.
He comes across to me as someone who would be very good at surviving in an outback area, would know his stuff, would know how to handle himself, and if you were just learning to prospect, he'd be a good guy to go with.
Joining our panel of experts tonight is Associate Professor Judith Fordham, one of WA's best-known criminal lawyers. Damien Loon, the former New South Wales police detective who helped convict notorious wife murderer Chris Dawson. Dr. Mark Reynolds, APM, forensic expert and former bush cop in the West Australian Police Force. And Ray's brother, David Kellett, who spent the past 8 years exposing what he believes was a woeful police investigation.
Ray and Jenny were just hard-working, good.
Decent people.
Decent people. They deserve nothing less than justice.
5 hours into their trip, Ray, Jenny and Graham Milne stop at a roadhouse. The only person we know who remembers seeing them alive from this point on is Graham Milne. And he is the only one who can offer details about the trip. According to Milne, they set up camp later that afternoon at a location called Bell Chambers, 30 kilometres south of Sandstone. But what happened to Ray, Jenny and Ella over the next 3 days is shrouded in mystery. Our investigation will examine Graham Milne's account of those 3 critical days, including the evidence he gave in 2020 when he took the stand at a coronial inquiry into their disappearance.
Did you deliberately mislead the police about where you went with Ray and Jenny in Sandstone in March 2015?
No.
According to Milne's evidence, from the moment they arrived at the campsite, Ella, the Great Dane, was a problem.
How many times did she run away, Mr. Milne?
3.
Ella's alleged bad behaviour is difficult for our experts to understand, given Ella had been on many camping trips before and had not run away.
In his account, and it's the only account we have, he is adamant this dog, Ella, would keep running away and Ray and Jenny would run after the dog. That's correct, isn't it, Dave?
That's his account, yeah.
If she was prone to running away for whatever reason, then you would tie her up when you got there.
Even Milne admits the Kellets would probably normally keep Ella restrained.
Do you consider it's likely that the Kellets, being devoted dog owners, wouldn't tie Ella up if she had run away from camp more than once?
Well, I'll be honest with it. If that's their choice, can't tell them what to do with their dog. I wouldn't tell them what to do with their dog.
My question, Mr. Milne, was, do you consider that's unlikely or implausible?
Probably unlikely.
Some eyewitnesses who drove past the camp in the following days reported seeing Ella sitting by Ray and Jenny's tent.
But this is also the same dog that after they disappeared, stayed at the campsite, didn't even eat the meat that was sitting on the table.
So our experts believe her allegedly bad behaviour warrants further investigation.
The only person that's telling us that Ella is badly behaved is the one person that came out.
Yes.
But as well as the Great Dane's seemingly uncharacteristic behaviour, Milne's account of the group's first day contains another strange event that will add to our investigation.
Did anything else of significance happen that afternoon, Mr. Milne?
Yeah, it did. We were on top of the hill. And a white Prado came in.
Milne describes an encounter with 2 men in a 4-wheel drive, whose use of guns, he says, was concerning.
2 guys in it. They got out. They were looking around. Next thing we heard was I assume it was a low-powered rifle because it didn't sound like a high-velocity weapon.
Milne told the coronial inquiry Ray fired shots from his own rifle as a warning.
Ray wanted to crack off a shot, just to let him know that on the other side of the hill there was somebody else in the area. So I went further down the track and got my packet of cigarettes out and put it in a tree. I came back and said, have a crack at that. First shot, he missed. Second shot, well, I went straight through. Dead centre.
What's wrong with that story then?
It's dangerous, for one. You don't know where anyone else is around that area. It's also stupid because you can just yell out half a kilometre in that area.
You didn't consider trying to, call out to these people to notify them any other way than firing off a shot?
Too far, they wouldn't have heard you.
Dave Kellett says his brother's odd behaviour, as described by Milne, is not how Ray would normally be with guns.
The one thing you did know about Ray was he was meticulous about his guns,
absolutely.
his rifles.
Yeah, we grew up on a farm, so pretty much the second thing we were taught after walking was firearm safety because there's guns around.
Former New South Wales detective Damien Loon is also of the opinion that Ray's actions were unusual for someone of his experience with firearms.
From Ray's experience of being a licensed firearm holder and an avid safety person with the firearms, it doesn't seem to gel.
Graham Milne stands by the truth of his account. The 2 strangers have never been identified or come forward.
Why would you fire off 2 rounds? Because you're showing aggression on aggression. And it would have been easier for him to yell out or signal in another way, perhaps a car horn.
Yeah, you don't normally fire off a shot.
Don't fire a round off.
Coming up, Graham Milne leaves Ray and Jenny
So things have turned sour.
Sounds like it, doesn't it?
and blames Ella.
So we've got the family going, something is really not right, and we've got the dog going, something is really not right.
That's next on Under Investigation. It's March the 21st, 2015. Perth couple Ray and Jenny Kellett are in the West Australian outback on a gold prospecting trip with their friend Graham Milne, from which they'll never come back. With them, their Great Dane, Ella. As the only person who returns from the trip, Graham Milne's account, including his testimony to a coronial inquiry in 2020, is central to our investigation tonight.
How many times did she run away, Mr. Milne?
3.
Our experts believe a renewed police inquiry is needed because of questions raised by Milne's account, including the reportedly strange behaviour of Ray and his dog Ella.
In his account, and it's the only account we have, he is adamant this dog, Ella, would keep running away and Ray and Jenny would run after the dog. That's correct, isn't it, Dave?
That's his account, yeah.
The only person that's telling us that Ella is badly behaved is the one person that came out.
By day 3, Graham Milne claims he was so frustrated by Ella's constant rogue behaviour, he decides to go prospecting alone.
He leaves the camp after a conversation that he describes as abrupt with Ray and Jenny.
He's obviously
yes, or maybe
feeling a
he's
little
just
out of
stormed off
sorts.
being grumpy. And I mean, evidently he's renowned to be a fairly terse sort of person. Maybe he's just had a hissy fit and decided to, get some space.
According to Milne's account, this is the last time he sees them. He says he spends the next 18 hours prospecting alone overnight.
He also, I think, said he took 4 slices of bread and I think it was 2.5 litres of water.
2 sandwiches and 2.5 litres of water.
Yeah.
Would you consider that to be a reasonable amount of food and water for 18 hours?
Yeah. In that close proximity to the camp.
It's during this time a coronial inquiry in 2020 will decide that Ray and Jenny disappear.
Just to confirm, you didn't sleep during the 18 or so hour period that you went prospecting?
No.
Why not?
Didn't require to. I didn't need it.
Milne says he returns to the campsite at about 2 or 3 a.m. on the 22nd of March. He says Ella is there and he assumes Ray and Jenny are sleeping in their tent.
Planning to depart for Perth, Milne says he makes a cup of tea and spends an hour packing.
In that time, I think it's intriguing that Jenny and Ray didn't wake up.
He has to have made some noise,
He's left
surely.
the campsite to go specking. She's away all that night. Comes back to the campsite in the early hours of the morning, and as we know, out in the outback where they were, there wouldn't be a sound. And that's the most important aspect here, because if he was to set up his trailer to depart, pack it up, etc., he would have made some noise. Wouldn't have you thought that a noise of that significance in the stillness of the night would have woken somebody up?
So we know that, well, we assume he didn't feel that he had to hit the road the moment he got back, but maybe he didn't want to be around. Maybe he did feel cranky.
That is a very long hissy fit, isn't it?
But you've had 18 hours to get over that little hissy fit, haven't you? Really?
Yeah.
You know, is that really the reason why he didn't awake them and say goodbye, or vice versa? Why wouldn't you go back to your camp, put your head down for a couple of hours, get up in the morning when it's daybreak, and then you can say goodbye, and then you can depart the campsite?
So things have turned sour.
Sounds like it, doesn't it?
Can you expand on...
The council assisting the coronial inquiry also questioned Milne's story that Ray and Jenny didn't wake and that he didn't say goodbye.
Would you agree, Mr. Milne, that by that stage you had tied the bike down, You had put some equipment away in the back of the car, you'd searched for the phone, you'd left some stuff on the table and you'd made yourself a cup of tea.
Yep.
And inevitably you would have started your vehicle and the engine would have made some noise. In all of those circumstances, do you still believe it was unreasonable to speak to them or to try to speak to them?
Yes.
Milne says he departs at around 4 in the morning. To our experts, it's a dangerous choice by a trained mine safety officer.
Despite all those hours prospecting, Milne gets in the car and drives, Mark.
Yep.
That's a long trip, isn't it, to go
It
back?
is a long trip. I doubt he would ever recommend to anybody, ever, go prospecting for 18 hours and then drive back to Perth for 9 hours.
Well, I had a similar experience many, many years ago where I was probably awake for about close to 30 to 40 hours on a job. And I was driving home and I had hallucinations and I had to pull over. That's how dangerous it was.
6 days later, on the 28th of March 2015, Ella runs desperately into the Sandstone Caravan Park 30 kilometres away, seeking food and water. Her sudden appearance will be the first warning that something terrible has happened to Ray and Jenny.
Concerns were raised on Monday when their dog was found walking through town alone.
The dog's like glue on them. Yeah. She will not be away from them. She gets so
She was
distressed.
Mum's shadow. Hearing that she'd turned up so far away from where they were supposed to be, just immediate alarm bells.
Coming up,
We've been telling the police pretty much from day one that something isn't right.
the biggest search in WA history.
You have 2 missing people. Surely you're starting to think there could be foul play.
And a potential witness speaks for the first time.
He's seen us and he's like just carrying on like a 2-bob watch, you know?
That's next on Under Investigation. Tonight, we're examining the disturbing disappearance of a Perth couple in remote Western Australia, a case our experts believe requires a renewed investigation by police. Ray and Jenny Kellett have been on a prospecting trip with their friend Graham Milne. Milne has fallen up with the pair and returned to Perth. 6 days later, Ray and Jenny's beloved Great Dane, Ella, is found 30 kilometres from their campsite. When the tag on her collar is checked, Ray and Jenny's family is contacted and they immediately report the couple missing.
It's a race against time to find a couple who disappeared in the West Australian outback.
Do that section, that small road section in between this pit and the other pit.
The search operation that follows is one of the most exhaustive in WA history. Helicopters, even horses.
Team 2, ready!
Dozens of rescue crews.
The amount of assets we've put into this, you'd expect us to find something, and we haven't.
The campsite looks like it has been suddenly abandoned.
I thought something wasn't right because Mum and Ray know the bush, they know the outdoors, they were really, really safety conscious, particularly Ray. We've been telling the police pretty much from day one that something isn't right.
According to former West Australian policeman and forensic expert Mark Reynolds, the deserted campsite should have been immediately viewed as a potential crime scene. As the chief forensic scientist for the WA Police, he quickly formed the opinion Ray and Jenny's disappearance was suspicious.
So we've got the family going, something is really not right, and we've got the dog going, something is really not right.
Criminal barrister Judith Fordham and former New South Wales detective Damien Loon agree.
And people do get lost and go missing in the outback, but the family was saying from the very beginning, it's not like them. They're experienced, they are not lost. Something terrible has happened.
Damien Loon, What would you do at that campsite?
I would declare it a crime scene. I would put up a perimeter of an inner and outer perimeter of police tape. No one's to walk in at all. And I would certainly contact forensics to come out for an examination of that site.
You err on the side of caution. If the examination of that campsite revealed nothing other than it was an abandoned campsite, then maybe you could release it. From my experience in homicide investigation, in this particular instance, there were a number of, in my mind, key indicators along the way that should have taken it straight up, but they never actioned those.
Even at this early stage, our investigators and Ray's brother Dave see numerous red flags pointing to possible foul play. Chief among them is a loaded rifle found unsecured in Ray's vehicle at the abandoned campsite.
Ray would never have left a loaded rifle in his car.
Not a chance. No, that's number one rule of firearms is you put bullets in when you're ready to shoot. And I think from memory, not just the magazine either, I think there was actually a bullet in the breech.
He's been around rifles all his life. He knows how to operate them, he knows how to use them. He has respect for them. And for a loaded firearm to be found in the back seat of the car...
That's not Ray.
Let's have another red flag go up there, and he doesn't do that.
Forensic specialist Mark Reynolds says the fact that 2 bullets were missing from the rifle should have also raised a red flag with police.
We've got 2 gunshots, we have a firearm.
And 2 rounds missing.
And 2 rounds missing. So there's a continuity almost between how many people are missing, how many shots have been fired, the physical evidence that supports 2 shots being fired.
At a coronial inquest in 2020, Graham Milne offered a possible explanation. He said 2 men had turned up in the area and were using guns. Milne told the inquiry Ray decided he should fire his weapon to alert the strangers of their presence.
So I went further down the track and I got my pack of cigarettes out and I put it in a tree and came back and said, crack a shot at that. First shot he missed. Second shot went straight through, dead centre.
But police didn't have Milne's explanation when the gun was found. That loaded rifle and the missing bullets will become critical later in our investigation.
Extra police and SES will today arrive in the West Australian outback to help search for a missing couple.
Move forward, nice and slow.
During the intense search for Ray and Jenny, police brought in Graham Milne to assist, and he was allowed to stay overnight near the campsite.
I cannot fathom, given Criminal Investigation 101, you have 2 missing people and surely you're starting to think there could be foul play. And the one person that's come out of it, he becomes persona non grata to that area until it's treated properly.
You're bringing a living DNA organism into a crime scene.
To our experts, that decision was a serious mistake, potentially contaminating DNA evidence. It is also another indication that police did not view the disappearance of Ray and Jenny as a possible crime.
If you've got a known crime that's happened, the only person left has to be a suspect by definition. You don't leave them there unsupervised. You take them back with you.
I think we've got to a point now where it should have resonated with someone that it just doesn't make sense.
The area is treacherous terrain, riddled with hundreds of old mine shafts.
With Milne's assistance, police search south of the campsite. It will prove to be in the opposite direction to where Ray's body will eventually be found.
Mr Milne, I have to put this to you as part of our case.
At the coronial inquiry, lawyer Sarah Kagari, representing the police, vigorously cross-examines Milne about the direction he took searches.
Did you deliberately mislead the police about where you went with Ray and Jenny in Sandstone in March 2015?
No.
You told them everywhere you went?
Everywhere where I was asked.
9 News understands something was discovered inside the pair's personal belongings, which indicates crews may have been searching in the wrong place.
Then, 5 days into the search, police make a remarkable discovery in Jenny's belongings at the abandoned campsite. A rough map drawn by Ray and Milne during their planning for the trip.
Damien, these three had a plan.
Absolutely, and it was clearly indicated that they planned to go down a hole. There was no doubt about it.
Marked clearly on the map is a presumed mine shaft called the First Hole, written by Graham Milne. It will turn out to be eerily close to where Ray's body will eventually be found.
You didn't think it was a good idea to tell them about a map you had drawn?
I forgot about it. Simple as that. Because I don't even remember when the map was drawn.
Mr. Milne, do you have the map in front of you?
I do.
Did you mark the location First Hole?
Yeah.
Why did you not tell police about that location when they were searching for Ray and Jenny?
It's obvious. I forgot about it or bypassed. I don't know, I don't know.
With the discovery of the map, police refocus their search to the north of the campsite.
Firefighters scaled a further 10 mine shafts today.
3 times they investigate a mine shaft where previously a smell has been detected. But from the surface, police see nothing. Then,
on the 8th of April, that same shaft is randomly selected for a media demonstration of search and rescue techniques.
With cameras rolling, a rescue worker descends into the mine.
It was the moment that firefighters discovered a dead body.
90, very decomposed.
The body is that of Ray Kellett. Coming up...
Nothing was fitting in my head. Ray being down a hole and not finding Jenny.
The forensic details...
He's been attacked.
...that reveal Ray was killed.
It is phenomenally rare that you get a fracture other than being strangled or being hanged.
And an eerie encounter on an outback road.
And he's seen us and he's like, oh, yes, fuck off, you know. That's not normal behaviour.
That's next on Under Investigation. It's April the 8th, 2015.
Police have now discovered human remains in an abandoned mine.
The body of Ray Kellett has just been found near Sandstone in the West Australian outback.
Out here, nothing changed. Forensic testing has come to the conclusion it is Raymond Kellett. You feel the endless...
His wife Jenny is still missing, 2 weeks after the couple set off on a prospecting trip with their friend Graham Milne. Milne assisted the search, but told a coronial inquiry he mistakenly guided police away from where Ray's body was eventually found.
Why did you not tell police about that location when they were searching for Ray and Jenny?
It's obvious. I forgot about it or bypassed. I don't know, I don't know.
After finding Ray's body, police initially and inexplicably to our experts treat his death as accidental, that he may have fallen into the shaft, chasing his dog Ella. Former WA policeman and forensic expert Mark Reynolds, who was on the police team, says he was pressing for the case to be immediately upgraded to a criminal investigation.
They treated it as believed to be an accident. But the problem for me with all of that is, where's Jenny? Yeah. Nothing was fitting in my head. Ray being down a hole and not finding Jenny, them being laminated together, the reason they went there, this is not a disguised hole in the ground that you're just going to fall down because you weren't paying attention. It's a ramped up mine shaft with a wooden collar Accident just doesn't get into it to me.
Mark closely examined the autopsy results and found what he believed was evidence of foul play. As well as his injuries, it included traces of Ray's blood deep in the soles of his boots, suggesting he'd been standing while bleeding, something unlikely to have happened if he died falling accidentally. To Mark, it was compelling evidence, but some of his colleagues disagreed. So he wrote an official report emphasising the need for a criminal investigation.
I had some, let we say, challenging conversations with some people from Major Crime about what are we doing about this and why aren't you up there? And that's why eventually, after several months of frustration, I went to paper, because things had just got out of hand.
His forensic report has been studied by former Detective Damien Loon and criminal barrister Judith Fordham. They too agree there is strong evidence of a homicide.
The fracture to his hyoid bone.
Yeah.
Judith Fordham believes the broken hyoid bone in Ray's neck points to strangulation.
In other words, it is phenomenally rare that you get a fracture other than being strangled or being hanged. Now, that, to me, says foul play.
He's been attacked.
Former Detective Damien Loon suspects the multiple fractures to Ray's cheekbone and damage to his right hand are signs of an assault.
The first one's hurt him because he's got a severe high-impact injury to the metacarpals in the right hand, stunned him, and then there is a secondary blow to the side of the face.
But to Mark Reynolds, one injury in particular stood out. Evidence of a possible gunshot wound to Ray's head.
He had an injury to his cheek, and in that injury there was an area of dislodged bone, and the diameter of that area of where the bone was missing was about 3-4 millimetres. When I saw it, my head went to a gunshot injury.
Remember, police found a loaded rifle with 2 bullets missing, unsecured in Ray's vehicle at the campsite.
We've got 2 gunshots, we have a firearm, and we have 2 victims.
And 2 rounds missing.
And 2 rounds missing.
2, 2 and 2. So I think, unfortunately, my belief would be that a firearm has been used in this case.
At the 2020 coronial inquiry into the fate of Ray and Jenny, their friend Graham Milne, who went with them on the trip, offered an explanation for the missing bullets. He told the inquiry when he and Ray encountered strangers using weapons near their campsite, Ray had fired 2 shots from his rifle into a cigarette packet to alert them.
Mr. Milne, would you agree that it's unusual that you would fire off shots to warn someone of your presence if you can see them?
Well, for safety's sake, you don't know. But we didn't know who they were. We didn't want to go down there. Ray elected to go down the other side of the hill and crack off a shot, just to let them know, and considered that was the safest thing to do.
Our experts believe police should have more thoroughly investigated who the strangers that Milne said they had encountered were, and searched for forensic evidence of the gunshots.
If there was 2 people up there, then they haven't come forward.
And that's really important. No one's come forward. And where's the crime scene photo of the tree that's been allegedly hit by Ray shooting at a cigarette packet?
Or the cigarette packet.
Where is it?
But there is evidence that was discovered that our experts think is of vital importance.
Cigarette butts found near the site with traces of Milne's DNA potentially place him 3 metres from the mine shaft where Ray's body was found. But it's a shaft Milne says he never went to.
Also on those cigarette butts were traces of Jenny's DNA.
The cigarette butts, tell us what?
Well, it tells a big story. There was Jenny's DNA on the cigarette butt. Out of the 3, there was 2 and 1 of Graham Milne's.
And Ray was a non-smoker.
And Ray was a non-smoker, most importantly. And it tells me that if we want to look about the transfer of evidence from A to B, it just tells me that they were there. Absolutely. And another flag missed.
It's been missed.
Graham Milne's barrister suggested the cigarette butts could have been transported there on the boots of searchers, a theory the coroner found improbable. Milne himself has consistently and strenuously denied being involved in Ray's death and Jenny's disappearance. Police have not charged him, and we do not suggest that he was involved in any way. But given the facts, our experts believe police should have approached their investigation very differently and should now renew their inquiry. Especially given there's one part of his account in which Milne admits lying to police about the exact route he took home.
Mr Milne, I refer you to the interview with police where you admitted a lie in relation to travelling along the Paynes Find Sandstone Road on the morning of the 22nd.
Originally, Milne told police that when he decided to head back to Perth, he left the campsite at around 4 a.m. and drove along the sealed highway from Sandstone via Mount Magnet. But data downloaded from his car's GPS puts him on another road from Sandstone to Paynes Find. The data was incomplete, just a few pings from his GPS that appeared to accidentally switch on.
That was the only part. 5 kilometres from the Paynes Find Road end.
Milne admitted his lie, claiming he'd briefly detoured for 5 kilometres to go back to his friends. Then he changed his mind again. He says he lied, not wanting to admit his confused state to police. And by his account, he'd been prospecting for 18 hours without sleep.
Mr Milne, if that was your explanation, why didn't you provide that to police when they interviewed you in November 2015?
Because it made me out to be an idiot.
With respect, Mr Milne, the police had made you out to be an idiot. That's your answer?
No. It was myself that made myself an idiot. It was embarrassing.
But that road may be another promising lead for police to investigate with a potential witness. A passing motorist, Mark Granville, who claims he saw a man on the Sandstone Paynes Find Road that morning at the entrance to the trail that leads to the mine shaft where Ray's body was found.
It was about 4:30 in the morning, somewhere around that. As we came over the hill, you could see some small tail lights in the distance from there to here. And then as we got closer, we noticed that the vehicle hadn't quite come out of the bush yet and straightened up. The gentleman, he was kneeling down next to this big checker plate toolbox. He was mucking about, and I thought, oh, he must have a bit of problem. So we slowed down to nearly stopping.
What Granville says stood out most, though, was the man's demeanour.
He's seen us and he's like, running out like that. Oh, yes, mate, fuck off, you know, like he's just carrying on like a 2-bob watch, you know, which you don't see. You know, like it just doesn't happen out here. It's not normal behaviour.
Milne strenuously denies the man Mark Granville saw was him, and there is no basis to believe it was. But to former New South Wales detective Damien Loon, Mark Granville's alleged eyewitness sighting is credible, and that Milne, by lying to police about his route home, has called into question other aspects of his account that should have been investigated.
Why would you want to do
Why
this?
would you lie?
Yes,
why would you lie?
he
Why
lie?
would you lie the route you took home? Now, doesn't that send to me another flag?
Coming up,
More than anything, I want to bring Mum home.
where is Jenny Kellett?
They deserve nothing less than justice.
This is not a circumstantial brief. We have hard evidence.
That's next on Under Investigation. Tonight, we've investigated a tragedy in Australia's outback.
Police have now discovered human remains.
The killing of Ray Kellett and the disappearance of his wife, Jenny, during a prospecting trip in 2015 near the town of Sandstone, 700 kilometres from Perth. We've examined the evidence, including the account of the only person to survive that trip, Graham Milne. Our expert panel believes our investigation has raised enough questions about the case for police to renew their inquiries. Inquiries that would be immeasurably assisted if Jenny's body was found.
Damien, is Jenny the key?
We find Jenny, we will find out what happened and why. Absolute key.
Do you agree?
Yeah, and it's probably the only key we've got left.
I agree. Yes. There would be so much information just associated with where Jenny's found, what's with her, if there's anything with her, all those sorts of things. And I think it could be the missing piece of the jigsaw.
The Australian outback has managed to hide many terrible secrets. The red earth around Sandstone, pockmarked with its multitude of mine shafts, is as challenging as any place on Earth
when it comes to finding answers to this baffling mystery. But there is some evidence, as we've shown tonight. DNA on cigarette butts near the mine where Ray Kellett's body was found. Forensic indications of what might have been a gunshot wound to his head. And a loaded rifle discovered at the campsite. A seeming failure by police to fully pursue Graham Milne's account of two strangers who allegedly fired shots in the area where the three were staying. And a witness who claims to have seen a highly agitated man near the trail that leads to where Ray's body was found, who says police failed to adequately follow up his information.
It just doesn't happen out here. That's not normal behaviour.
For Barrister Judith Fordham, investigating that evidence could lead to a criminal case.
In my view, it should have been run, and it should have been left to members of the community, namely a jury, assisted by properly qualified experts and a thorough investigation to make their determination about what actually happened. And it's a sad thing that that hasn't occurred.
It's a view echoed by former New South Wales detective Damien Loon, who spent 18 years gathering evidence to convict wife killer Chris Dawson last year.
You would argue, though, that there's more circumstantial evidence here than perhaps you had with Chris Dawson's case.
This is not a circumstantial brief. We have hard evidence, and I'd give it a run.
If Ray's death and the failure to find his killer is heartbreaking to his family, what happened to his wife Jenny is in some ways even more terrible for her loved ones.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
It was then very disappointing and genuinely heartbreaking when the public prosecutors didn't move forward with any charges.
For Jenny's daughter, Kelly, any future that is tolerable must include finding her mother.
More than anything, I want to bring Mum home. Because she should be scattered with Ray on their farm. They shouldn't be apart. Without people being honest and people coming forward, we can't do that. That she's never going to be found without a bit of honesty. And that's what I want. I want to bring her home.
Dave, it's your family. It matters so much. I mean, can you explain to somebody who might have information how important that is?
Well, it was vitally important. I mean, Ray and Jenny were just hardworking, good.
Decent people.
Decent people.
And they deserve
Sorry.
to be found. This is, yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, they were. They deserve nothing less than justice, and for Jenny to be brought home, to be back with Ray.
Perhaps now the only hope lies with you. Something you may have witnessed, something you may have heard, something you may know. Crime Stoppers is offering $250,000 reward for information which leads to the conviction of anyone responsible for the deaths of Ray and Jenny Kellett. Or contact us at our confidential email under investigation@9.com.au. Thank you all very much for joining me tonight, and I thank you. I'm Liz Hayes. Good night.
Next week.
He was Australia's first celebrity chef. Hard-drinking, womanising, Willie Copen vanishes without a trace.
Do I believe he was murdered? Yes.
Liz Hayes serves up one of Australia's wildest mysteries.
His wife was having an affair, you know, a three-way going on.
Who had the knives out?
It's the worst question in the world to ask somebody, do you think your mother killed your father?
New Under Investigation, next Wednesday after Married on 9.